persecution of American Muslims. Riz Khan at this time on Al Jazeera.
Leaders are remembered, be they loved or feared. But what of the men and women whose hands build their monuments and whose blood stains their battlefields? People in power at this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. The top stories here on Al Jazeera. In Libya, pro-Gaddafi forces have claimed the centre of Azawiyah after fighting killed at least 40 people. However, there are conflicting claims by the rebel fighters who say they have retaken the main square. In Bin Jawad, rebel forces are in the town centre, pushing Gaddafi forces to the west of the city. And earlier, the Libyan government said it had taken back the coastal town after heavy shelling there. While Gaddafi's forces have also launched multiple airstrikes on the oil city of Ras Lanuf, and the Libyan leader appears to be on a diplomatic offensive. Planes carrying senior government officials from Tripoli have landed in Lisbon, Cairo and Brussels. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher is in Brussels.
The takeoff of the three planes was first reported on Twitter. That sent everyone scrambling to find out who was on board and where they were going. It's now become clear that one touched down in Cairo, one went on to Portugal so that the person on board that flight can have discussions with the Portuguese foreign minister, and a third flight, we're told, went to Paris and then on to Brussels. Certainly the suggestion that has been made is that these talks with the Libyans were suggested in the first instance by the White House. So why Brussels? Well, over the next 48 hours, there are two very important meetings going to get underway here. First of all, on Thursday, we have NATO, the world's strongest military alliance. Libya was always going to be top of the agenda. We're hearing from NATO that a number of scenarios have been played out, essentially. They're putting things in place to allow the political decision to be made on what they do next with Libya. And of course, a no-fly zone is something that a number of countries have been pushing for. And then there is a meeting of EU leaders on Friday as well. What we're likely to see there are the sanctions that have been imposed by a number of countries against the Gaddafi regime be extended right across Europe. So such as the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which owns shares in a number of companies across Europe, owns properties across Europe, runs bank accounts for the Gaddafi family. All of those will be frozen. So we're seeing Muammar Gaddafi claiming substantial victories militarily in Libya at the moment, but also it now looks as if there's a diplomatic offensive underway to speak to the African Union, the EU and NATO. What will develop will become clear, hopefully, within the next 48 hours. But it certainly is a very interesting development, and Brussels here, right at the heart of what's going to happen.
Well, some other breaking news on the diplomatic front. On the other side of the coin, the French President Nicolas Sarkozy is to meet on Thursday envoys of Libya's opposition National Council. A statement from Sarkozy's offices says that he would meet Mahmoud Jibril and Ali Essawi to discuss, quote, the general situation in Libya, in particular the humanitarian situation and the actions of the National Council. So just a confirmation there of a meeting on Thursday between Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, and members of the National Council, the opposition National Council. A Tunisian court has dissolved the party of the ousted president, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. The Constitutional Democratic Rally, or RCD, was suspended last month, pending the court's ruling. Ben Ali used the party as a way of maintaining power during almost 2 decades as leader. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for attacking a funeral procession in northwest Pakistan. At least 37 people have been killed and 100 others injured in Wednesday's attack. Kamal Haider reports.
It became a race to save the lives of those caught by the bomb's deadly blast. The victims had been taking part in a funeral procession. Now it was a procession of wounded to hospital. Some would live, but many would die. This attack was cruel even by Pakistani standards. The attacker, a young boy, said to have been wrapped in a shawl. Just as the crowd prepared to pray, he detonated his bomb. The main target, the leadership of the anti-Taliban militiamen in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, a volunteer fighting force organized by the government in its long-running war against the Pakistani Taliban. They've been targeted before. 2 years ago, the head of the force was killed in a bomb attack. The Pakistani Taliban may be feeling some pressure here. However, almost every week, they remind the government in Islamabad that they remain a potent force in Pakistan. Kamal Haider, AlJazeera, Islamabad.
Civilian deaths in Afghanistan have gone up, according to the United Nations report released on Wednesday. The latest figures show that 2,777 civilians died in 2010. That's a 15% increase on the year before. 3/4 of them were the victims of anti-government elements, many killed in suicide attacks and roadside bombs. Over the past 4 years, almost 9,000 civilians have been killed in the conflict.
The message to ISAF is that these statistics are unfortunately indicating exactly what you say, and that one civilian victim is too many, and that while we recognize and acknowledge a clear determination of avoiding these errors, we are still asking them that this should be coming to zero tolerance.
Meanwhile, the top US and NATO commander in Afghanistan, General David Petraeus, says he's preparing for a tougher fight this summer. However, he said a reduction in American forces was still possible in July.
I will make recommendations to the chain of command, to President Obama, in a few months as we get closer to the July timeframe, which, as you'll recall, in the policy is the time President Obama has said that we will initiate the responsible drawdown of the surge forces. I will provide options to him, various packages, and a recommendation with, obviously, analysis of all of that. We would hope that by July we will have solidified and even expanded further the security bubbles, the security gains that have been achieved over the course of the last 8 to 10 months in particular. And then maintaining the progress that has been achieved just in the last few months in areas in the north and northwest where the Taliban were expanding really for several years.
The Nobel Peace Prize winner Muhammad Yunus has appealed against a Bangladesh High Court decision which backed his sacking from Grameen Bank. Last week, the central bank removed the 70-year-old as head of the micro-lending bank for being over the retirement age. Allies of Yunus say that the decision is part of a government vendetta against him. Yunus has been an outspoken government critic who attempted to form his own political party 4 years ago. He pioneered the Grameen micro-lending bank to help many small farmers. Space Shuttle Discovery has landed in Florida, ending its 39th and final mission as the world's most travelled spacecraft. It's the first of NASA's 3 remaining spaceships to be retired.